This week, I was on BBC News.
Well, I asked marine biologist Elizabeth Mills to explain a bit more.
Mass bleaching events have become a much more common occurrence in the last few years.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a marine biologist and science communicator, which means it's my job to talk about the wonderful, weird and wacky world of our oceans. I want to be able to provide people with education and connection to our oceans, and this also means that within my remit is sometimes talking to news and media outlets about what's going on in our ocean. This week a news article came out talking about the mass coral bleaching on the Great Barrier Reef, and I was asked to go on BBC News to talk about this. It's obviously incredibly sad that I'm having to go on to talk about corals and their mass bleaching and how devastating that can be both for coral species and for just the wider incredible coral reefs. This is the 5th time this has happened in the last 8 years, and in this video I want to share a bit more about exactly what's going on with this mass coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef. Coral is actually an animal. It's actually soft and squidgy and got tentacles. It's very closely related to things like anemones and jellyfish. And what it does is it forms a calcium carbonate skeleton, a stone skeleton basically, which is what forms these amazing structures and reefs and these gorgeous, incredible sculptures. It does this to protect itself, and because it's forming these amazing, incredible, giant reefs, they're called ecosystem engineers, which means that coral is providing homes and refuge and food for just loads and loads of other species. Actually, there's 9,000 species that live on the Great Barrier Reef. But coral's not doing this all on its own. It actually decides to have a friend to come and help it, which is these things called single-celled algae, basically single-celled plants. You might actually see the word zooxanthellae written out as well. That's that single-celled algae. And they basically form this symbiosis, this friendship, where they help each other out. The coral goes, "Hey algae, do you want to come live in protection inside my body?" And the algae goes, "That sounds great. I'll come do that, and I'll provide you with lovely sugars and lots of like yummy stuff for you so that you can go and thank you for saying thank you for letting me live there." And they live together perfectly happily. And actually it's that single-celled algae that is causing the colours in coral. When they have this algae in them, they're the bright, lovely colours that we know coral today. It's when these algae leave the tissues of the coral and disappear off is actually when we get these bleaching events. This is happening because the coral and the algae are stressed. And they're being stressed by increasing temperatures in our oceans. These rising temperatures are happening because of climate change, because of the emissions of humans and us, and what we're doing to the planet is causing this. So as we put greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, our planet starts to warm. But the ocean is incredible and actually acts as a heat store. So it's taking about 90% of the energy that we make as humans in the atmosphere and absorbing that into the ocean. In doing so, it's raising the temperature of the seawater. Because this change is happening so quickly, animals, including corals, are getting stressed. And when they do this, the algae that's inside their tissues actually stop producing those lovely sugars that are helping it, helping the coral, and actually produce things that are harmful to the coral. And so the coral has to kick out the algae. And this is what is causing the bleaching and why corals go bright white. It's not actually the death of the coral. If the temperature reduces, then the algae can come back in. But because when a coral is bleached, it's more at risk of starvation and disease, and eventually it can lead to death. And what we're talking about here on these mass bleaching events isn't just a few bits of coral getting stressed. We're talking about massive, massive amounts of coral being bleached. And when this happens, usually that means mass mortality and lots of corals dying. And even if the corals can recover, it's still a large problem because this is happening to more and more corals and happening again and again. The time between these mass bleaching events are getting shorter, the corals are having less time to recover, and it's really going to have an impact. And corals are just incredible. They are less than 0.1% of the ocean floor, but they are home to a quarter of all fish species. So a quarter of all fish species rely on these reefs being healthy. As well as humans, people rely on coral reefs for food sources, for tourism, for cultural benefits, just pure amazing wonder and enjoyment. I know this can sound helpless, but a lot of my content on this channel is always about trying to provide the hopeful aspect, which is why I think being able to appear on the BBC was so amazing and important for this, because it's a regular reminder of just how much we are all connected to the ocean. I'm based here in Scotland in the UK, and I'm a marine biologist talking about coral reefs that I've not visited on the Great Barrier Reef. But it's so intrinsically connected to all of us about how important it is and how amazing that is. And because this is something that's happening because of increased temperature rises, it's actually something that the emissions of the entire planet is helping to contribute towards. I know at times that this can seem something that's very hopeless. And on my channel and the content that I make, I like to put the hopeful spin on this. So I think this is a great example of where we can take a moment to reflect on how we can help corals. And I think one of the big things that's often forgotten about is just how important learning about our oceans, connecting to them, realizing how amazing they are, and then by falling in love in a little bit more of the oceans and realizing that they might not be there, they might not be the same even within our lifetimes, and thinking, how can I help? And I think the power of everyone's voices is so important. Even if it's just talking to your friends about it, telling people how cool you think it is, making videos, using your voice to reach out to companies, to your MPs, telling people just how much you care about our environment and that you want to see changes, real actionable changes from companies, from our governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I know it can be frustrating to see these things happening, but I really think that it's just a reminder for us all to try and do as much as we can to help our oceans. If that starts with watching this video and learning a bit more about corals and falling a little bit more in love, then you have made the first step into making a difference. And I have hope that we can help these corals. If you don't just want to wait for me to appear on the news next time to learn about some marine stuff, head over to my YouTube channel or my TikTok to learn a load more about sea life videos. There's literally hundreds.